Mark is back. He's back again. And this is Season 10, Episode 6. And we are fresh back. When I say we, I mean Mark is fresh back, and I'm here with him from the great global show, Munich. And you know what? I have an awesome bumper prepared just for this situation. You may have not heard it in a while.
Marc Phillips on the road.
Does that bring back some memories? Good memories or bad memories, Mark?
Well, that was when I went to Europe last fall, and I made like 12 stops in 10 days on plastic benches practically. I don't think I'm ever going to say I'm not going to do EasyJet. I'm just not going to do that many EasyJets in one trip. This Munich show was maybe my favorite one, just in terms of having a great time, everything going smoothly, no little things I had to solve. I think it was last year's trip equated to the film The Martian, where you just have to solve problems until you finally get to get home. And this time it's not like, this is the maybe the fourth time in, because there was one before COVID. So there's that one, and then this is the third one in the row. It's just the point where it's like I feel like maybe I figured this out, and it was easy and it was fun. And the love out there for part-time audiophile and the occasional podcast is strong right now. And so that was kind of the added bonus of this year, was just a lot of people responding to what we're doing and being really positive. And it was a great show all around. Really enjoyed it.
Today's episode of the Occasional Podcast is sponsored by Music Hall. For over 25 years, Music Hall has designed and built high-value, no-nonsense turntables. Audiophiles are told the more they spend, the better it gets, but Music Hall believes you can get great sound and build quality without breaking the bank. Their newest model, the Music Hall Stealth Direct Drive Turntable, was just awarded Part-Time Audiophile's 2023 Best Value Award. Editor Marc Phillips wrote, "It didn't take me long to realize a Music Hall Stealth turntable was a bit of a miracle. A great sounding direct drive table for a crazy low price." Music Hall remains a steadfast advocate for quality and affordability. Whether you're looking for your first or your last great turntable, do yourself a favor and visit musichallaudio.com to find your nearest authorized dealer, or to order online with free shipping and a 30-day money-back guarantee. Today's episode is also sponsored by Shit Audio. Shit Audio designs and builds audio components in California and Texas. Based in Valencia and Corpus Christi, their wide line of amps, DACs, and audio accessories fit any budget, starting at $49. For a full rundown of all their products, visit shit.com or stop by their retail store in Old Newhall, just north of Los Angeles. That's SCHIIT.com. Yeah, and I don't know if I'd say this enough on the show, guys, but everybody, thank you so much who comes up and says hi at the shows to us. I really appreciate it, and I think we've talked about it on the show. There are guys who come up and they know our little inside jokes from this.
I mean, because I'm kind of introverted and I may not respond to compliments from people in the correct way, but I still like it. And there was a couple people at Munich, and they were just really like, I listen to every podcast you guys do, and it's great.
So, Mark, you got there okay. Everything was pretty smooth in the transit. Tell me a little bit, for those who listen to the show a lot, they'll catch up with reports. But, the Munich show, I liked for those joining for the first time to just kind of recap. It's a little bit different than a lot of the American shows that we cover. How do you kind of think that this particular show was different than your typical audio circuit in America?
Well, to be honest, the show itself kind of seemed the same. It's the show. They do things a certain way, which is a good way. They're very organized. For instance, if we compared this to Axpona. Munich is bigger than Axpona, but because they've been prepared for this longer, it seems a little organized, less chaotic. We're at Axpona, we're running around like crazy. Munich, it just kind of unfolds in front of you, and you have the added bonus of seeing a lot of gear that we just don't see in the United States very often.
Right.
Gear that should be here. That's the fun part for me, is just saying, what is this brand? I've never heard of this before. And then you listen to it, it's great. And then, a year or two later, we finally get in the US because they've gotten some recognition. So that's the fun part of doing the Munich show.
Yeah, and I saw too from some of your coverage, which is up on the site right now, going up on pt.audio.com if you want to check out photos and Marc's written word there. I see like representation for even some brands here, but generally it's done by either some other type of form, like be it a distributor or a retailer will have some. But when I see your coverage from abroad, I see the people who actually make the brand, who are representing the brand directly there, which is cool because you get to see even some of the same brands, but with the people who actually design and talk about them more fluently. So I think that's an interesting wrinkle in that too.
Yeah, so you might see, those people do go over to the U.S. shows, but not always. If you're used to dealing, we deal with brands in the U.S. and we deal with imported stuff, and we might be dealing more with the distributor than the manufacturer. And so it does get exciting to talk to the people who are actually behind the designs. It's another added bonus for going to the Munich show.
So tell me a little bit straight out of the gate. Maybe you have your favorites, maybe you have some other things in mind, but I want to know, was there anything that you were talking about, new products? What was your favorite new thing that you saw from the show?
Okay, so I think it's been for the last 3 years, I've been following the work of Benno Meldgaard, who is a speaker designer. He's worked for Gamut, he's worked for Arido, he's worked for the Griffin. He is a very well-known, in Europe, he's a very well-known speaker designer who's done some great things over the years. So he's been working on something called Baun Audio, that's B-A-U-N. So the first time I met Benno was in the Audio Skies booth on the main floor. And all he really did was had a few pieces of this. He's making a speaker out of a composite material that's very, very stiff, much stiffer than all the metals and the woods out there. And he's making the enclosure and the speakers, the drivers themselves, out of the same material. And supposedly it's going to be pretty revolutionary when this comes out. People are going to be really fascinated with it. First year, I see a piece of the material and a brochure. Second time, I see a driver. Last year, I saw the mock-up of the entire enclosure. And then this year, they said, "Oh, have you heard Benno's speaker yet?" And I said, "Oh, yeah, it's finally working." And I go in there, and it's a completely different speaker. It's a small pair of it's two-way floor standers, and it has an interesting story behind it. So Benno and one of his friends got together and designed this speaker, this little two-way petite, it's not that huge. And they got together and designed the speaker for his friend's daughter as a birthday gift. So they designed a pair of speakers for her, gave it to her on her birthday, which is, I think it's a pretty awesome gift. But the resulting, the end product, what a dad, what a nice dad. But the ending product was so good that Benno decided, it's like, maybe I should take this to show and get the reaction from attendees on how good it is. And every single person who listened to the speaker turned to him and said, put this into production. And for me, that was one of my favorite surprises, was hearing this speaker. It's probably just going to be about $20,000 or so if they bring it into production. I think after the reception, they will. But these speakers, they reminded me a little bit of the Borison speakers in that they're not very big, yet they sound like a big giant speaker that do everything. But this was such a relaxing speaker that I was in there for way too long. I kept falling asleep with every track that they played for me, but it was unusual that I kept track of the music in my head, but the rest of the world dropped away. And it was just such a sublime, just beautiful, wonderful experience that I can't help but think that these speakers are just going to be fabulous. And these aren't even those crazy composite speakers that are coming out. This is just something they just designed a two-way floor sander and put it out there, and it's amazing. So again, that's Baun, B-A-U-N audio. And Benno Meldgaard is the very, very, everybody loves Benno. I mean, you see him walk through show, and you hear everybody, Benno, Benno, Benno. So you will hear more from this speaker or the speaker maker in this company. But that was my little favorite thing, my single favorite product of the show. Yeah.
And I give kudos to anybody who pushes the materials boundary in this
materials are fascinating. Yeah. But the material science in high-end audio is one of the most interesting parts of audio.
And I think there is something to it because a lot of our favorite sounds from a lot of the shows and the reviews that we do are from people who tinker a little bit more on that side of things. I know there is always going to be a place for the paper cone driver in the world, and I still think you can make really, really good sound with the paper cone driver. It's just the exploration I admire, I think. Not necessarily. It doesn't mean there's no rule in my mind about this material is better than that. It's about exploration.
It's about innovation. Innovation is what's exciting, and we think about terms of the digital side of things and how the technology is advancing at such a fast rate. But to tell you the truth, the most interesting things are, for instance, Benno speakers and the materials that they're using, like DS Audio, the optical cartridges. That's a very, very huge innovation that's transforming the cartridge market right now. And I don't think people really understand how important it is because it's for analog. It's, old stuff. It's not new stuff, but still, we're still trying to come up with innovations in the stuff that's been around for a really long time. And I love that about high-end audio.
Our friends at ZMF Headphones are sponsors of today's episode. ZMF is a curated collection of various sounds and styles in the form of dynamic and planar magnetic wood headphones, designed by founder Zach Merbach since 2011. ZMF has garnered an A+ recommended component in Stereophile, Headphone of the Year on Headphonics.com, and been a 2-time winner of the SBAF Golden Schlong Award. ZMF Headphones. That's the letter ZMF HEADPHONES.com. ZMF Headphones is the place to go to check out ZMF's collection and learn more. ZMF, traditional craft and modern acoustics. Let's go with how about, did you hear a good, and this I love this question because sometimes it doesn't have an answer. Did you hear anything in the budget range that blew you away? And I'm not saying that good speakers can't be found down there. It's just that very often the audio shows aren't oriented that way. There's a lot of high-end involvement. Did you hear anything that you loved that was just like a really great budget unit? Okay, so that's the thing about Munich is that if you're down in the hallways, then it's more like a open convention with booths rather than typical rooms. It's more like the marketplaces we have in the U.S. shows. And so there's some things in there that are great for budget products. But the one I'm going to point out is in the big room, and that is Dolly. And I went to visit Dolly 2 summers ago in 2022 when I went to Denmark to visit Audio Group Denmark. I also visited Dolly, and I was there for the debut of their new Dolly Core speaker, which is a Danish company coming back to its roots, which is Danish furniture, Danish assembly. They had kind of started outsourcing to China until COVID, and COVID really, everybody knows how the supply chains were just destroyed. It became more expensive to get things shipped from China, so that Dolly was one of the first companies and said, we're going to go back to making everything in Denmark. And they introduced this new flagship speaker called the Core, K-O-R-E. $110,000 is $120,000 a pair now. And it was something that Dolly had never done because they were kind of I don't want to say mid-fi because that's disrespectful, but they were not going high, ultra high-end audio. But now because of the things they learned with the Core and the first thing I said 2 years ago is like, good, I hope this really trickles down into their more affordable lines. Well, I saw proof of that this time, which was they had the Dolly Epicore, which is their latest line. And it brings the Core technology and all the crazy construction techniques and all the proprietary drivers that Dolly makes there at the factory in a more affordable speaker. So instead of it being $110,000 to $120,000 speaker,
this Epicor was somewhere going to be around between 12 and 16,000. It's a whole line. And this speaker at 12 to 16,000 reminded me a lot of that $110,000 core. They've got a new signature sound to them that's really warm and open and airy. Dolly will now be considered as part of high-end audio because they've definitely taken a new direction, and it's definitely impressive. I like these new speakers a lot. And they're not crazy priced.
Tell me a little bit about the demographic makeup of the show. Did it seem a little bit younger, more family-oriented? I feel like we had kind of a breakthrough of sorts here in the U.S. with the Exponent show being a little more mass populace and a little less niche in the last show they did. Did you get that same kind of vibe at Munich?
The Munich show, it's a 4-day show, but the first 2 are for trade. It's for the industry. On those first 2 days, Thursday and Friday, it's very much like going back to CES in the old days where it's business to business. So it's a lot of the industry, a lot of your friends, despite the fact that it's so crowded on those days, it feels like maybe the public's been let in, but they haven't. It's just
wow,
the size of the industry. So on Saturday and Sunday is the public, and that's when we saw the same thing. We see the families, we see the kids, we see a lot of women, families getting together and doing it like almost like it's a vacation for them. So definitely that's how Munich is. Saturday and Sunday, though, because it went to public, I've never seen a show that crowded. I don't have the numbers right now, but I was just sent an email from the company that puts on High-End, and it was a record-breaking show for them, which probably means it was a record-breaking show for everyone. So it was a big deal. It was really crowded, and yet for some reason I was still able to kind of sneak into rooms and get my job done without too much. Where Expona, there was a point where I had to leave the rooms because I just couldn't get anywhere near the systems.
Yeah, and that's in the 2 days of B2B. I know it's not as awesome for our listeners that are our attendees because they basically can't get in and they're down a day. But for us as the press, when we go, it's a godsend because I don't like being in the rooms with, I don't like having to do my thing while someone else is trying to do their thing. It's kind of a conflict at times if it's too busy. And I don't like to, it's the most embarrassing thing for me when someone's like, oh, the sweet spot or fighting over the sweet spot. Those things make me very uncomfortable. So to be able to run to rooms, room to room without, with other press people there, because I don't mind being rude to other press people. I'm joking.
Well, but the reality is that we stay out of each other's way where when the public kind of wanders in, they'll walk right in front of you in the middle of a shot or middle of filming video. They don't even care. So you have to be more aware of.
Well, it's also I think people don't know. Some people don't know what we're doing there, what's going on.
I've seen specific examples where they did know what was going off and they were just jerks. Yeah.
There are people that waltz around thinking they're really, the most important people, and then there's attendees that think they're the most important people, and anyone can think that. So
let me once again state on the record that when I go into a room, I don't want anybody to leave. And I have seen high-end audio celebrities go into a room and the exhibitors clear the room for that person and lock the door. And I don't like that. I like watching the crowd react to the same things I am. So I will never clear a room. And it's done too much. It shouldn't be done at all.
Yeah, and I will say there is something to watching the crowd. Because I think I've had some of the most interesting experiences, if you can do it on the slide, just watching others in the room. I've had one dude, I'll never forget this. It was one early on in my very early shows. He was listening to an audio room. He's just sitting there. He's doing the eyes closed thing. Maybe his head is shaking. He's like into it. The song ends, and he screams at the top of his lungs. It wasn't supposed to sound like that. It wasn't supposed to sound like that. No one knew what he was talking about, mind you. No one knew. He was all this running monologue in his head, and he started yelling. And I was like, but it was completely silent up until that point. I was like, dude, this guy's into it. Maybe he's a little unhinged, but God bless him. He loves the hobby.
Sometimes you get swept up. I mean, my favorite thing is seeing people crying. They're sitting there listening to music and they're crying, and that's kind of special. I mean, I'm not a person who cries listening to music, but I respect that. That's what it's about, is just having that just raw unexpected emotional response to music. And that's what our hobby's about.
I sometimes they'll play Diana Krall and I'll cry, but it won't be for the reason you're talking about.
Yeah. Hey, somebody played Diana Krall for me, and I sat there and listened to it like a man,
Yeah. Man up, Brian. This is the job, sir.
No, I know. I was one of the original people who said no Diana Krall, but it was never personal against her as much as audiophile reactions to her, which get a little obsessive.
And I say this truthfully. I've seen her in concert. I have seen her in concert at the Hollywood Bowl.
See, I haven't gone that far. I'm not that bad.
She did a lot of improv, which I applaud. It was very regular jazz. It was great. It was an amazing show at the Hollywood Bowl. And she told a lot of stories, and it seems like a very wonderful person. So I am only joking when I say that joke. You could have inserted any audiophile overplayed song into that joke. It was just a joke.
I told a room full of people at Munich that I said, I really like her husband a lot. And they all looked at me blankly like, what does that mean? Yeah, what does that mean? It's like, you don't know who her husband is? I had to burn the place to the ground after I walked out of the room. But that's a song. That's a guy I've never heard. I don't know how his production is. I'll have to think about it. But I feel like Elvis Costello is the guy you're referring to. His songs could play there. I don't know if they sound good, but I know he's a good songwriter. He's got some great songs. Yeah. I mean, his later stuff sounds really good, obviously. But if you go back to his first 10 albums, they sound pretty good. Yeah. I still listen to them all the time.
No, hell yeah. I like that's a deep track. Some people don't even know who he is, but he was revered in some circles for so many years.
He was a great songwriter, a great lyricist. He was one of those guys that as he went on in time, his voice got better and better and better. He became more of a classic singer. I've seen him 4 or 5 times over a great many years, and it's been fun.
And he's one of those like pop-ish storytellers, right? So he does Watching the Detectives is a story. And then I know a lot of people know him for this, but the song Allison, I feel like has this really classic melody to it where it's like up there with some of the Beatles' melodic work. I'm not saying he is the Beatles or he's like the Beatles. I'm just saying his songwriting capabilities on Allison and these type of things, it's like, it soars. So if you don't know the guy, aren't aware, something to check out if you like that real instrument stuff.
He has one of my favorite drummers in rock and roll, and that's Pete Thomas. When he has the Attractions, Pete Thomas is one of my favorite drummers. And if you want an example of that, listen to the song Lipstick Vogue from this year's model, which is the second album. And that is one of the great drum tracks of all of rock and roll.
Speaking of great drum tracks, how you like that transition?
First song of the show.
Did you get a chance to play Chocolate Chip Trip by Tool at the show at all?
Yeah, first room I walked into was Inuos. And Inuos, when I walk in the room, they always sit me down and play it for me. And so first song I listened to at the Munich show, first thing Thursday morning, Chocolate Chip Trip. And it was awesome.
Tell me a little bit about the day-to-day. How did it go in the Inuos room? What else did you kind of tackle while you're at the show on the first 2 press days?
The first one I think about, this was a room that I heard last year, and it's been haunting me all year. And I thought, if I go back to Munich this year, which I did, I really got to spend more time in this room because it was really special. And this was the room with Phasmation cartridges and electronics, Wolf on Langa speakers from Germany, and the Yuki Samitsu, which they're trying to kind of shorten to Yuki, the Yuki turntable, which is just a fantastic, beautiful, intriguing, innovative turntable. One of the most interesting things about it is the tone arm, which there is no angle to the head shell. This is a straight design that just sticks straight out, almost like a linear tracker, but it's not. It's pivoted. It's an open architecture. You can see the main shaft or the drive. This room it's one of the few systems that you'll hear at Munich where it draws you in. It's not in a big room, and it's not $1 million system in a big room that blows your mind. It is a room that constantly pulls you in and makes you notice all the beauty and the details of the music. So got to listen to this room for a second time. It's interesting this year because now they have distribution in the U.S., so people will be hearing more about the Yuki Samitsu turntable. Axis AXISS, the distributor. The only unfortunate thing about it is when I first saw this at Munich, I've seen it every year at Munich. The first time, which is a static display, and I said, this is interesting. So when I first learned about it, it was somewhere in the neighborhood of 20,000 to 30,000 euros. So that's a little bit more in US. And unfortunately, by the time it reached US, they worked out with the distributor. They figured all the things. This table, I heard a rumor, it's not official yet, but about 90,000 instead of 20. So at 20 to 30, I'd be like, brown bagging it for a year to save up for it. But for 90,000, I think it's just going to have to be a pipe dream. But it is just an impressive, great sounding turntable. And I think it will make a big splash here in the U.S. over the next year or two. That was just, I love the sound of everything. And the Phasmation and the Wolf on Langen speakers are very, very interesting. The next one is the Audio Vector Trapeze Reimagined. That is the name of the speaker. It is from Audio Vector of Germany. We've reviewed Audio Vector speakers. They're usually tall towers, multi-driver towers. They're very nice. It's a very nice brand. But they decided to bring out their very first speaker that they ever made, which was back in 1979. It was called the Trapeze, the Audio Vector Trapeze. And it's a wedge-shaped floor stand or three-way floor stander. Very interesting wedge shape. The shape of it reminds me a little bit of Spica speakers, TC50s and TC60s, in that it's not just a triangle, but they try to kind of bring some interesting angles to the rest of it. The reason is you kind of set them straight and the angle's already built in for the drivers to hit you. It was really retro looking, nice looking, beautiful wood grains, comes in different colors. Looks like a speaker from 1979 though. Sounds like a speaker from 20 to 24 because this thing just was unbelievably cool. I walked in and I found Anthony Chiarella, who is the distributor, and I said, "Trapeze, love it." And he goes, "Yeah, you want them?" And I'm like, "Sure," but these are $19,950 a pair, along with that Benno speaker, which was supposedly around 20,000 speaker. That's kind of bringing really, really superb sound to audiophiles at that price, which nowadays, 20,000 used to be a tremendous amount for speakers, and now it's just kind of middle of the line. But for 20,000, either one of those speakers is just fantastic. I can't get through a show without mentioning Audio Group Denmark, because they are at a clip right now where they used to introduce one new product at every show. Now it seems like they're introducing 3 and 4, and there's whole new lines. There's the C line, there's the F line, the L line, just all these new lines, and it's going to be hard to keep track of it. They had a system, and it was the new C3, so I reported on the C1 for Exponent, which was...
Yes,
16,000.
I heard that one. It sounded great.
Yeah, so this is the C3, which is the floor standing version of that. It's like a 3-way floor standing version of the C1. It's 35,000 a pair, but they had also made it to the new U588, which is a integrated. They always have like an integrated and a DAC and a streamer. So this is the first time it was a combination of the 880 series, which is $70,000 a piece. That's their top of the line electronics for AVIC. This looks like the 880 line had a baby with the Access Forte line, which is their entry level line, which they start at $5,500 for. It looked like the Fortes with all of the functions in one box, but with the construction of the 800 series, which is all solid copper and titanium, and it's a combination of both. It's $35,000. So basically you had this $35,000 pair of speakers and this $35,000 kind of all-in-one box. And then the cables, and they also had their Ethernet switch and their power conditioning. So that's the complete system. This thing sounded fantastic as a whole. As a system that was probably less than $100,000. I hate banding around these terms like that's not a lot of money, but it's not a lot of money for the sound you're getting. That system really, really impressed me. It just seemed to be in the sweet spot for these guys. They do Boris and they do Access, they do AVIC, and they do ANSAs. And you can pay a lot or you can pay a little and you still get this really great sound. This is something right in the middle of it all, was just really superb. It reminded me of listening to one of their very big, very expensive systems. And that's the thing you notice about them, is that as you go up and down the lines, there's that commonality to the sonic signature that stays the same. It's very revealing, very neutral, very low noise. So that was the big thing from them.
I did want to ask you real quick before you move to the next person.
Can you just explain the Borison speaker line again for me? Because I think it's a very interesting kind of thing they have going on. What's the entry level pricing and what letter they designate? And then what's the middle and high? Because I know you said they have a couple lines now.
At the entry level, it used to be the Z line, which is being replaced by the C line. And then they brought in the X line, which is the one that's been capturing attention for everybody. We had the X3s reviewed by Greg Weaver. I think it's 12. It's unbelievably good for that money. So that's the X line. That was the entry-level line until I saw the appearance of the L line. And the L line seems to be even cheaper. So this was a pair of L3 speakers that were $5,500. These were floor-standing three-ways. And they were only $5,500. So that means if they come out with the C1, that's going to be probably their new affordable speaker. It'll be a two-way. I bet it'll be like $3,000 maybe. They're bringing the prices down.
The reason I ask is because we have been going on and on and on about this brand for, I don't know, Mark, would you say like a couple of, at least a year? And it's always been unobtainium, you know. And it's been this thing. And I just very excited to have like some type of communication to share with you guys that we have this really high-end, really good sounding speaker that's kind of bringing it down a little bit. And now we're at 3,000 and or whatever. We're getting closer and closer to something that most people could afford, which is such a cool thing to happen because I think that Mark would agree that they've blown a lot of people away. And now we have something to report back saying, hey guys, you could check out this brand sound for less than $5,000. So I just think that's a really fun message for those who are looking for a more budget thing from all of our readers. And we do have some messaging for you there.
They had the M line, and it was the M1 mini monitors, little two-way monitors that are $100,000 a pair. And that's what got me started on this journey with them was hearing these speakers said, oh my God, how are you guys doing this? They went up for a long time into the M series all the way up to the M6 speakers, which was last year, which are $550,000 a pair. And then from there, they went all the way to the bottom. So they took all that trickle down, all the things they've learned from doing the M line, and they came up with the X speakers, which are amazing. And they came up with the Access Forte stuff, which is amazing. And that stuff is really good. And you sit there and you listen to this stuff, and it's not crazy money, and it reminds you of the super expensive stuff. And I think they're geniuses for doing this. So anybody who complained about the cost of a pair of M3 or M6s or the 880 series, well, they listen to you, and now you can get a lot of that performance for a very competitive amount of money that's got to have a lot of other manufacturers very, very nervous. And that's kind of an old marketing thing. But in this case, it's absolutely true that they are down in the price ranges where they could really make a huge impact in the market.
Disruptors,
very much so. So one of my favorite matches up, I heard this 2 years ago at Munich, and it's just two brands that work really well together. And one is True Life Audio. That's a Greek brand of electronics. Our own Panagiotis Katovitas reviewed the big stuff a couple of years ago and considered it among the best in the world. I've got the integrated amplifier, the TSI 300, I believe it's called. That's coming to me in the coming week. I think it's $45,000, $50,000, maybe more integrated, but it's one of the finest I've heard. This is beautifully made stuff. They have been matching with Gershman speakers. Gershman, which is, of course, a Canadian speaker. And so last year I heard, I think it was one of the smaller amps with the Gershman, their 30th anniversary avant-gardes, which is, I forget how much it is, probably about $25,000, $30,000 pair of speakers. This year I heard the monoblocks, the biggest stuff from True Life Audio, made it to the new Gershman. It's called the Black Swan, and it's always been their flagship, and they have a new 30th anniversary of that. I believe they're about 75 grand. This was a big, bright, authoritative, happy system that played really loud, went really deep, and they were a lot of fun. Oh, they're just such nice people. Both the Gershmans, the TLA people are just wonderfully sweet and kind and excited, and I like going in that room, but in this case, the sound quality was amazing. Loved it. I always have the same comment for the In-Your-House room. I really love them in terms of their exhibit rooms, because what they always do is they do very, very effective A-B comparisons to show the sonic advantages of their latest advances. So they don't just talk about, we put this new part in and we thought it was a lot better. No, they sit people down and go back and forth. And it usually isn't a big chore to hear the differences. You don't have to, I think I heard something, No, it's usually like, oh, yeah, clearly better. This year they had the new Zenith. It's not Zenith, it's Zenith because of Zen. And it's a Zenith NG, and it's a streamer/server. And it's very, very configurable, so you can kind of outfit it with options that make it more of a streamer or more of a server. You can, get more storage, that sort of thing. I heard that in their system, which was a lot of the Griffin electronic. There was some Nagra in there. Korma speakers, which I hadn't heard before. A great system for hearing the differences between the old Zenith and the new Zenith NG. And also between now the Zenith is getting closer to the Statement, which is their $20,000 player. I imagine the next time I see them, they're going to have a new Statement just because the Zenith was really close. And that was the next one down the line. I think that's all I got for individual rooms.
So... do you have...
I wasn't ready for that. In fact, I was looking around for my. I got to bring my cajon back in here so I can I can give you one. Too.
Yeah. We'll jam out sometime, you guys. You'll be so impressed. What do you got? If you didn't pick up on that's a drum roll, and I'm wondering what that's a sign for. What was your best of show for this Munich 2024 audio show?
So, do you remember what my best of show was for last year? That wound up going on to be the product of the year.
But I'm gonna guess Bugatti by title. Am I right?
Yes. So this year, so they had it there. But what I listened to was they have some new amplification on the Contriva G3. They started around $80,000, and if you get some of the beautiful finishes, it might knock it up a little bit. But it's basically an $80,000 speaker, the Contriva. And it was with the Farios 2 monoblocks. So it was a very simple system again. It was a system that I kind of heard something close to it last year when I heard the Contrivas before I heard the Bugattis. And I said to myself last year, I heard the Contrivas first and said, if I hadn't walked over to the other side of the room and listened to the Bugattis, the Contrivas would have won the best sounded show. And little did I know that that prediction would actually come true this year, because the smaller system in the room with the Contrivas was the best thing I heard at the show. It's fantastic. So I've heard a lot of crazy things at Munich. I heard a lot of amazing systems, not all I've talked about here, but I will in the coverage. And I sat down with the title, and you just get that feeling where it's like, this is how it's supposed to be. This is what the others are working toward. And it's very unusual because this Munich show was a show where the theme was the gigantic horn speaker systems. There was the Cesaros with the dome and turntable, which I actually really liked. There's Ari Surat, which is, I basically was listening to $1 million pair of speakers, multi-horns all over the place. That was basically required an acre of room to work because it was just such a big system. Those were $1 million speaker systems. I don't know if I've heard $1 million speaker systems. I've heard $1 million systems, but I haven't heard $1 million speakers in a long time. Of course, the ESD acoustic, which is that crazy Chinese brand that has the massive $4 million systems with, all the little boxes. So there were big horn speaker systems there for 10 times, where the speakers cost 10 times what those Tidal Contrivas sound like. Yet I take the Tidal Contrivas any day. I mean, they do everything. They're big, they're beautiful, they're refined, they're just the best speakers I heard at the show. I mean, I'm not picking on big horn speakers, but they have some compromises you have to make to your lifestyle in order to enjoy them. The Contrivas you don't, other than coming up with the initial outlay of cash, which isn't that bad when you're looking at $800,000 horn systems. That was the ESD one. They had the Super Dragon. I don't know anybody with a house with a room that'll fit those in them. But they were 800,000 euros a pair. Plus, I go into the Contrivas and they're 80. I think they started like 79,000. And I didn't hear anything better at the show. I heard a lot more expensive, not better. So that's going to be my pick for best of show.
Mark, Thank you so much for that comprehensive wrap-up of the show and the highlights, and, of course, your best of show. Did you do anything else after the show? What did you spend some time out there in Europe?
I went to France. It was fancy. I ate a lot of French food. I went to go visit JMF, and most of the people who pay attention to me know that for the last couple of years, I've been really impressed with JMF amplification of France. Amazing stuff. The running joke is that I told Laurent, it's two brothers that run it, Laurent and Arnaud Fusilier, and I do not speak French. But anyways, I told Laurent, I said, last year when I saw him, I said, "You're my favorite solid state amplification right now." And he said, "No, I am your favorite amplification, period." And I feel like after visiting that, heard the stuff, I've heard a few of their best systems. I've heard, this is the second year in a row, I've heard an all JMF system, including speakers and cables, and this amazing universal transport that they have that probably won't make it to the U.S. because nobody wants to pay $70,000 or whatever it is for universal transport. I'd pay $70,000 if I could for this one because it's so amazing. Where I stayed was called Jérôme, which is in the northeast part of France, not far from the German border, and so I'll have more to say, but that will be kind of a companion piece to all of my Munich coverages talking about my visit to JMF. And then I spent my last day in Paris, going to sidewalk cafes, watching the people go by. I just thought it was one of the best shows I've been to. Everything went smoothly. Nothing bad happened to me. I didn't come home with any more physical injuries than I usually do from shows. I feel rested and relaxed and ready for the next 3 to 4 months of doing nothing but hanging out the lake and reviewing stuff.
Yeah, I like that.
And that is it. That is it. A positive show experience for the first time in 2024. It was wonderful.
And let's not forget, not just physical, but like you can catch a cold pretty easily at show. I don't want to like sway anybody from going, but it's not.
No, I don't want to say anything that's
virus. Yeah.
When I caught COVID on the way home from the Florida show, but it was on the plane. It wasn't at the show.
Yeah, I'll say this: it's gotten better, as I hope the whole world has in terms of catching things at shows. People are a little more conscious after the whole pandemic, and I think
still people wearing masks. At Munich, there were still quite a few people wearing masks, so it's still out there. So.
I just wanted to share a fun little thing with you. I know we've talked about this a lot on the show. The 300B, I got a 300B amp in the form of a Woo audio integrated, nice. And I caught a little bit of the fever. I think it's, I have a high efficiency speaker attached to it right now, the Zoo Dirty Weekend DW6 it's called in Walnut with the Superfly upgrade. And
which you just reviewed last week, so.
Yeah, so we got the review out. And I did a fun little thing with my partner where one of her albums that she loved came out. So I set it up and we sat down and listened together to the new Billie Eilish album. It's what we call Compromise. But I often talk about, and in the review too, the initial album that they did has a lot of electronic sounds, but the vocals were mic'd really well. I will say for this album, I'm not going to go out on a limb and say it's the greatest audiophile album, or let's just say this. It's not as good as that initial one, When We Fall Asleep, Where Do We Go? I would say production-wise on that, her brother Phineas did this thing that's got some great vocal representation. It's not that it's not great on this newest album, but rather it's just a lot more busy and it doesn't have that separation as much as that album did with the vocals. Interesting listen. I still think that album's better for production, and maybe the songwriting's a little bit better too, but she didn't quite fall off the cliff as much as the last time I did this with my wife, which I think you might hold me to the fire on this, but the last Taylor Swift album didn't quite meet my expectations as much as, her expectations, I should say, and my expectations because I was sitting there listening with it. So if you keep up on the mainstream pop, things are coming out. I don't think anybody really does this, but I'm throwing it out there as a niche thing. Honestly, a beautiful time to spend with your partner if you want to just sit and listen. She listens to my stuff plenty, so I consider this Compromise. So it was a nice thing. And again, really fun listen. The 300B integrated from Woo Audio. It was just a really cool experience, and I'm lit up. So I'm going to try to get some more speakers in to pair with it. I'm trying to get some DeVore stuff in to pair with the 300 piece because he did that at the show. And now that I got a little bit of the love in the lab here, I'm very excited to get more speakers in. I see what people's passion is about that tube and that design. That's just really an interesting diversion from the strife of life, you could say. It's a fun little niche. I'm excited to get into it even more.
I'm right there with you. The 300B, the Alnick Audio 300B that I'm using, which is the T1500 Mark II integrated amplifier. It's just like it's my new romance. It's just just makes everything sound so good. And so this will be a summer of I really need to get the review out on it because it's been so long, because I've loved it so much, and I've had to kind of do different systems. But man, I can't wait to put that amp back in, which will probably be this week.
You said earlier, if you want to see my full impressions, it's up on ptaudio.com for the Zoo speaker. I believe the base model on that starts at 1600. So high efficiency, full range driver at 16. Yeah. So that's not the model I reviewed. I reviewed the upgraded package, but I think it'd be 21 with the Superfly upgrade. But still, we talked about expensive stuff. I don't want to leave anybody out. We talked about some lower stuff too. So, that's where I sit. Mark's fancy. I sleep in the dirt.
The system I have in right now is a little crazy. And I do have a big room, but it's a new world for me in terms of what I'm doing.
Love it. Well, anyways, Mark, glad you're back. I'm glad you're healthy. And I will see you very soon, hopefully, at the next show. And I hope you have a wonderful summer, man. Thanks for coming on the show.
All right, man. Thanks, Brian.
The Occasional Podcast is a production of the Part-Time Audiophile Network, which includes parttimeaudiophile.com, The Occasional Magazine, the PTA newsletter, and audiohead.com. You can stay in touch with us on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and YouTube. The Occasional Podcast is produced and hosted by Brian Hunter, executive produced by Scott Hall at PTA Productions.
The Occasional Podcast and its original associated music is monitored, mixed, and mastered on the Focal Trio 6 BE studio monitors.
If you haven't already, please subscribe to The Occasional Podcast on iTunes, Google, Spotify, or wherever your favorite podcasts are downloaded.